What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. Japanese Nationals just wrapped up over the weekend. A duelist named Chami won the event with a Hero Lives Heroes, which is a deck that, quite frankly, I am in love with. I think that this deck is very good. I think that it has probably the potential to be Tier 1. I think it probably will be Tier 1 when we get all the cards. It's unfortunate that so many of these cards that are imperative to the deck aren't out in the TCG, but it's a deck that definitely is explosive, probably higher than even Chaos Dragons. Let's go ahead and talk about the deck and show you the deck list first. One copy of Stratos, 3 copies of Bubble Man, 2 copies of Neo Alias, 1 copy of Zephyros the Elite, 3 copies of A Hero Lives, 3 copies of Emergency Call, 3 MSTs, 3 copies of Night Beam, 3 copies of Miracle Fusion, 2 copies of Gemini Spark, 2 copies of Duality, 1 copy of Rota, 1 copy of Storm, 1 copy of Monster Born, 1 Future Fusion, 3 copies of Call to Haunted, 2 copies of Solemn Warning, 1 copy of Solemn Judgment, 1 copy of Bottomless, 1 Chain Disappearance, 1 Hero Blast, 1 Fiendish Chain. Okay, so there are many different things that we can analyze about this deck. First off, the way that a Hero Lives Heroes plays basically is you don't worry about defense that much. Generally, the second or third turn, you can OTK your opponent. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you can OTK your opponent on the first turn. The deck, to be completely honest, plays a lot like Chaos Dragons. It goes to that same type of win condition of, you know, bombarding your opponent with big ass monsters. It just does it in a different way. Heroes basically use a combination of just level 4 monsters to constantly make your rank 4 exceeds, and then you know, you combine what resources you have left in the graveyard to use cards like Miracle Fusion to put other 25 to 3200 beaters, and generally you can put about 3 or 4 of these guys on the field. Your opponent really doesn't have much that they can do. The back row removal has to be crazy in a deck like this. A lot of Japanese players are main decking 3 MSTs, or main decking 3 copies of Night Beam, so that you don't have to worry about Solemn Warnings. Mainly Torrential Tribute, because that is a card that you definitely don't want to see. Cards like Book of Moons, Solemn Judgment, I mean, anything that might cause a problem. Bottomless Shop Hole is huge. So most of these decks are going to run, you know, Heavy Storm with tons and tons of back row removal. Cards like Future Fusion are definitely excellent in this deck, and this is one of the big reasons why the deck runs it, is simply because of Zephyros the Elite. It's a good way to, you know, you reveal the Dark Hero, you dump this guy in the graveyard with a copy of like Bubble Man or something like that. You can put the Future Fusion back in your hand, and then you can make very, very easy exceed plays. The way that you facilitate the OTKs, 2 cards that are imperative. Number 1 is A Hero Lives. It costs you half your life points, but it's a cost like Solemn Judgment that you can always pay. I mean, if you have A Hero Lives, you know, all you do is you get extra copies of Bubble Man. I mean, Stratos is going to get you either a Bubble Man or a Neos right off the gate. This gives you extra cards from your deck that make level 4s, and some of the level 4s in this deck are just absolutely ridiculous in this deck. Call of the Haunted is a card that a lot of people have not been playing in A Hero Lives, but I think that it's actually really amazing because you won't always have the OTK turn 1. Going for it turn 2 and 3 is actually more consistent in my opinion. This sets up for very big plays where you can just summon Stratos turn 1. Stratos dies. If Stratos doesn't die, you just summon whatever, you summon like your Neos Alias or something. Make it exceed, make like a armor, a Blade Armor Ninja, detach Stratos, Call of the Haunted Stratos, get a copy of Bubble Man, then special your Bubble Man. It's like, okay, well, I've already got 2 exceeds, and you know what I mean, and chances are I still have a lot more options like a Miracle Fusion or a Monster Born, so on and so forth, because I mean, you can get any card in the deck to the graveyard with Future Fusion. So some of the exceeds in this deck are just bananas. When you look at a card like Dagusto Emerald, I mean, this card is absolutely sick because this, even though this deck only has 7 monsters, I mean, you can fill up your graveyard quick as hell. I mean, you have the Hero Lives, you have Future Fusion, you have Stratos. I mean, you have tons of ways to get the Stratos. You're going to be able to get monsters in the graveyard very, very fast. So both of Dagusto's effects are pretty broken because if you use his second effect, then you get Neos to the field for free. If you use his first effect, then you can just draw extra cards. Chances are, you know, oops, I might draw a Hero Lives. That's another card on the board. Oops, I might draw a Miracle Fusion. Now I've got a 3200 beater on the field for free. You know what I mean? And this deck just constantly overwhelms the opponent with just a huge swarm of just big ass monsters. Again, this is basically Chaos Dragons for Japan. I mean, they don't really play that deck that much. And then if you happen to run into things like Chaos Dragons or Dino Rabbit decks that are play a lot slower, then obviously you can side out a lot of your backer removal and just side in defense, as he did with, you know, D-Prisons and Bottomless Trap Holes, Mirror Force, so on and so forth. I would say his traps, he obviously had to tech a little bit for the Insecta matchup. That's why you see stuff like Main Chain Disappearance, the one copy of Fiendish Chain, stuff like that, because, you know, Dino Rabbit isn't as big, and I mean, against Insectors, I mean, if you Fiendish Chain their Dragonfly, you basically win the match. So definitely a deck that I think is going to be on the rise next format. I think this is going to be a top contender as long as we get a lot of these cards and, you know, pretty reasonable time frame. So tell me what you guys think of this deck. If you were surprised, I'm not surprised in the slightest that a Heroes won Japanese Nationals. I would have picked this over Insectors just because I feel like all you have to do is just side hard against Insectors and this deck can dominate it. But this deck is pretty difficult to side hard against. I mean, Effect Veiler doesn't really stop the OTKs. It stops Heroric Excaliber, but still, there's plenty of ways to OTK with this deck, even regardless of Effect Veiler. Click on that. I'll talk to you guys later.